The method of carve that we're going to be using is the method that I call a topographical carve. As you can see, I've left some extra space along the edge. I've drawn where my template says the guitar shape will be, and I've left about ½ inch on either side of the line. That's going to be the edge of our carve. Now, one important thing that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to get your fretboard out, and you're going to have to figure out where your bridge is. Your bridge is, at least in the type of carve that I'm doing, the bridge is going to be at the high point of my carve. So I'll do that, and then we'll get back to it. As you can see, I've now decided that I'm going to connect my 25.4 inch fretboard a la Martin Acoustics at the 19th fret is where it's going to touch, which puts my bridge right about there. Now my carve will then be centered around that position, and I'm going to go ahead and draw out the topography. Now what all that is going to be is, just like you've seen any map, it's going to have your highest part with a circle, and the next lowest a circle, and it will follow the shape of the carve, and then we're actually going to go to another tool and start cutting that out. But what I first do is I'm going to do a 5/8 inch carve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a topography line for every 1/8 of an inch that I'm going down. So then I'm going to go back, because I don't really want to cut an 1/8 of an inch at a time on a safety planer. I'm going to go back and draw 1/16 inch lines in between that. And this is going to give me a nice looking carve. As you can see, I've now drawn out the topography for the for every 1/8 of an inch. You can see that it's going to start high here and bell out. These are closer together here, so that means it's going to be a steeper carve, and it gets shallower as it gets to the edges. So you're going to get a nice curve down and then bell. And I've done the same thing for everywhere. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to put in 1/16 of an inch topography. In the end, I actually opted not to do 16th inch graduations. I kept with the 1/8 inch ones. That doesn't mean that I'll be cutting an 1/8 of an inch at a time. I'm still going to go in 16 of an inch increments when I'm doing the cutting. But the 1/8 of an inch gives me more freedom to hand carve a little later, which we'll see. And because this is a new shape, I decided that I want that freedom instead of a more finite and structured carve. Just it lets me perfect it a little more. Once I know exactly what the carve is going to be like and I do another of this style of instrument, I'll go to 16th inch graduations. What I've done here is, one of the major problems with this topography carve style is that each time you do a pass for a 1/16 of an inch, you lose the lines. So even though I have them drawn out here, the first time I do a pass, which is going to be everything except this center circle, I'm going to lose every single one of my lines. Now the outside line's easy because everywhere it's a ½ an inch, but the other lines aren't, and I don't want to have to rethink my carve every time. So what I've done is I've just taken some tracing paper and I have copied out the carve pattern onto the tracing paper. That way, every time I have to redraw the carve structure on, I just take something sharp, not as sharp, something hard, and that way I can just push down really hard and follow the carve with that hard object. And what that's going to do is it's going to put an indentation in the wood, so then when I can pull this away, I can redraw my lines. And now we're about to head over to the drill press to start getting cutting. This is the tool that we'll be using to carve out the topography. As you can see, when I rotate it, it's got 3 cutters that spin around, and it essentially works as a kind of like a planing router that is chucked into your drill press. And over on the side here, I've got my depth stops. So what I'll do is I'll set it to the initial depth with the table, and then subsequently each depth that I need to go from there, I will move these up a 1/16 of an inch, so half of one of these lines. and go from there. And that's going to let me accurately do my carve without changing the setup every time. One more thing to keep in mind when you're doing this is that the cutter heads are spinning this direction, clockwise if you're looking down the spindle. So you have to keep in mind that when you reach somewhere like this, if it's unprotected, it'll chip that out. So remember to come in at these parts straight and do them very slowly. One other thing that I'm going to do is, for this first pass, I'm going to check my depth to make sure that I've got it routing at the correct 1/16 of an inch. I'll do it outside the pattern where it doesn't matter, because I mean that's going to go down a huge amount later. Also, this is essentially a router, and routers run at much higher RPMs than a drill press. So you're going to have to run this at the highest speed that your drill press can take, and that coupled with the wider diameter of this will make up for the velocity that a router has versus tangential velocity that a router has versus this, and it'll make it cut well. And there's my test cut. Now that we've got our depth set, I'm going to go ahead and do part of a pass with you watching, and then it's a pretty simple process, and you get the idea, and we'll show the end result and also the transferring of the topography lines as we go, so you can get an idea of what we're doing. There's no reason to watch 20 minutes of safety planning. And that's the start of that first pass. I'm going to bring it all the way in until this first line. Alright, and here we are back at the workbench. We're now done with the first pass with the safety planer, and this is essentially what it looks like. As you can tell, it doesn't have to be exacting. It just has, it's going to guide your carve later. So that's our first pass. That's now at 1/8 of an inch. We can check that with our rule. Perfect. Now what we're going to do from here is I'm going to show you putting these lines back on, and then you've obviously seen what the safety planer does. So I'm going to go back and do the rest of this, and we'll come back when I've got all my topography cut out. Oh, I also forgot to mention that it's a good idea to put a center line and some markings on your traces that allow you to find back where you were. And I know that all my edges are exactly a 1/2 inch from the side, and I know where my center line is. So there we go. I now have back where I was. I'm just going to use a pen with its hard point to put pressure on these lines, so that when I take this off, I now have them. I'll just go back over them in pencil. Actually, that time I pushed so hard it actually drew through the vellum, which is good. So now I've already got my lines. Actually, there's a couple spots that it missed, but other than that, I'm now ready to go for round 2.